An addict. Before we get started, would you guys join me in a moment of silence, please? Just for today, thank y'all. And one other favor I want to ask of you guys, in light of a lot of what I've been seeing going on lately, would you guys get up and just hug the person to the left and to the right of you, tell them welcome. Thank you. I know, right? I got some Skittles. Don't make no bunch of noise from Skittles. No. First off, I'd like to thank the committee. Thank the committee for asking me to do this. And everybody in here, I want you guys to give the committee a hand. And if you see them, give them a hug. You know, oftentimes committee members end up serving for a year, 2 or 3 or 4 or more. They used to say 90% of people, 10% of people do 90% of the work, but it's more kind of like 5% do 95% of the work because they just kind of swap positions and stuff. And, you know, oftentimes people won't serve. I'm looking at Marcia up here. Oftentimes people won't serve, and sometimes they'll try to discourage other people from serving. And Marcia and I we were dubbed the Mr. and Mrs. GNI at one time. And we were like, what the hell is that? And I was like, y'all are Mr. and Mrs. Guilt and Intimidation. Y'all try to guilt and intimidate us doing H&I. And we were like, well, why the hell we have to guilt y'all into giving back what's so freely given? So, you know, and another thing, too, I want to touch on right quick. One of the things, a lot of times we ask for respect in different areas. And one of the things, I was at a meeting in Marietta one time, and this kid was going in and out, and after about 3 years, he says, man, I never heard that part. I never heard this part in the reading. And I'm like, well, they read it all the time, but a lot of times if we're playing with the readings and stuff like that, people just don't hear it. You know what I mean? It's their time to play and chime in. So I think that's why we ask for respect in that aspect. You know what I mean? It ain't trying to control or get you gloom and doom or dull and all that stuff. It's just that, so the addict, this is a seriously fatal disease. And people miss that message. A lot of times we bury a lot of them. So I'm a Marietta peeps. But, you know, I'm going to just start out by, you know, there's a lot of new people here. If you got a year less clean, raise your hand, please. All right, welcome. I thought about, I got 39 of them. You know, I thought about starting out with when I got to Narcotics Anonymous, but, you know, we say the newcomer is the most important person at the meeting. And so I want to talk a little bit about the craziness and the insanity before I got to Narcotics Anonymous, you know, and I'm going to say this too because I know I forget everything, but I know I forget. One of the things I've been, we'll leave it alone, we'll do it later. Anyway, you know, a friend and I, Kathy and I, was just walking earlier and talking about, like, we believe that we were born addicts, and those lights are bright. We believe that we were born addicts, and, you know, one of the things I didn't tell you a while ago was, you know, I think I was an addict out of the gate. Like, you know, I was talking to one of my sponsees one day, and I was telling him about my brother, and this is, I heard Biff speak in '87, and he said he wouldn't know a dysfunctional family if it hit him with a bus and backed over and hit again. I'm like, well, I got a functional family, and I didn't really think about it. I didn't know any better, you know what I'm saying? I just didn't know, you know, and I was telling a buddy of mine about my brother. I said, man, you know, I talked to my brother, I'm like, man, it was about a year ago. I said, you remember when you had me that stick my head out the window and you hit that wasp nest and I had to go to the hospital for that night? He was like, nah, I remember when I had you step out the door and I hit that wasp nest and you were in the hospital for 8 days. I'm like, I almost died. He's like, yep. But my response, he's like, what did you do to him? Well, I'm like, nothing. I'm like, oh, I know what I did to him. One of the things I did, my idea, even at an early age, that's why when I got here and I heard the word addict, I'm like, man, that is so cool because there's a name for this stuff, so maybe there's some hope. But I, as a 3-year-old, my idea of humor was to climb on top of the barn as my dad's cutting everybody's hair and get all my brother and all his friends to come there. And my idea of humor was to tinker on all of them, So something was wrong, way early, you know what I mean? Something was wrong out the gate, And it was funny too because I told my brother, I'm like, well, you remember I was 3 and he was 8. And I couldn't beat him up, but I said, remember every toy you ever got? And you tried to figure out why somebody stole all your toys? He was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I threw every one of them in the well. I threw every single, his little pretty red bicycle. I mean, I couldn't beat him up, but he wasn't going to enjoy the toys around me, So early on, there was a real twisted sense of humor. And I think about one of the things that happened, and I share this because one of the things about recovery is, we're here, I thought I was here to recover from my drug of choice initially. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I just want to get off this chemical. And boy, little did I know, you know what I mean? But I got here and I realized, man, there's a whole lot more to this. But, the stuff that, and I'll get to this later, but the 2 things I left off my 4th step it wasn't that raunchy stuff. It was stuff I was kind of ashamed of. But I'm going to share this as a 4-year-old, our house burned out. And one of the things I talk about sometimes, too, is a God in my life at a real early age. At 3.5 years old, I was outside and I ran around the house and something told me, look up at the chimney. And I looked up and there was a bird's nest just, kind of, and the chimney was a little cracked. And I'm like, that's weird. There's a bird nest and that chimney's cracked. So a few days later, the bus driver ended up backing over our little well. We had an outdoor, aging myself, we had an outdoor well. And I was up under the quilts and blankets and stuff, and something kept nagging me about getting up and going and check the chimney. And I did it, and it was fine, and something nagged me again. I went and checked it again, and I saw sparks coming from it. And it was an old wooden house. You could look outside the house, in the house, from not at the window, but just, you know what I mean? Some spot, look at the ground sometimes. So, but I ran in, and my pops had bought me a little 6-pack of socks. I ran in, I grabbed the socks, and I grabbed my little 6-month-old baby sister, and I wrapped her up real good. And I ran out by the road, and I ran to go get Mom, but the house burnt to the ground, just like that. And anybody that knows me, anybody that knows me know you don't, 6 or 7 a.m. and stuff like that. Hardly anybody in here talk to me at 6 or 7 a.m. unless I hadn't gone to bed yet, So I'm not a morning person. I've never been a morning person. But I stay up late night forever, so I'm not a morning person. So for me, that was really a God working in my life as a 3.5-year-old. You know what I mean? Who gets up and go check the chimney and then get up and go as a 3.5-year-old, but the house burnt to the ground real quick. And I stayed with me and one of my family members stayed. It was 2 and 2. We stayed with different people, but the person I stayed with, the lady ended up molesting me as a 4-year-old. And and I was in treatment at one point, and I asked about 50 people if they had ever been molested, and 4 of them I think hadn't been molested. So one of the things we realize when we come here, if we share experience, strength, and hope, sometimes you hear me oh, share, you've been to help somebody. If we share truthfully where we are and who we are, somebody else has been there most of the time. So people get help from it. So I don't live in shame and fear and guilt and remorse and all that type of stuff today. It's and I often I celebrated 30 years November the 1st. But I hadn't gotten away from. Somebody got a bet on how long it's going to take me to cry, and a bunch of people probably do. But a big ball tell him it's a good thing that you met him when he couldn't cry instead of when he could cry. It met me when I could instead of when I couldn't. But and I never apologize about being able to cry, and I'll tell you what in a minute. But I was, what the hell was I? But. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, past that. But anyway, we share that stuff because we want everybody to get better. So it's I don't live in the shame, feel guilt, and remorse anymore, And I treat each day and I talked about having 30 years clean, but one of the things about it is November October, Halloween of '86. I remember that day like it was yesterday. You know, I love kids. I love people in general. A lot of people don't love it. I love people, you know what I'm saying? I love kids, love old people. You know, my great-grandfather, one of my best friends, born in 1880, and he died in 1976, like the day before my birthday. And he was one of my best buddies. But I was sitting there, I was backed up at a store, and I remember looking at this store, and I didn't, you know, I got to the point where I robbed dealers. I wouldn't rob stores, but I'm looking at this store and looking at all these little kids. They're so happy now. And I remember sitting there, look at all them little grinning happy bastards. Like, you know, I'm like hating on the babies. That's like Halloween, and you know what I'm saying? I'm just like, and it's just like, man, I have something's got to change, because it's like, you know, and for me, one of the things I'm gonna move on, you know, and that's kind of some of this stuff for the newbies is like, you know, we might sit here and we have, you know, 10, 20, 30 years clean, but I got clean when I was 25. And one of the things that, you know, I share that for is like, you know, I was at this spot at one point. You know, I wasn't a hugger. You know, don't come up and try to hug me. You know, Shannon, where's Shannon? Shannon tried to give me a hug the first day I came to a treatment center. You know, he tried to give me a hug, and I kind of just hit him in the chest and knocked the wind out of him. I didn't hug my family at the time. I ain't finna hug him, you know. And I remember Shannon well, I'm going to back up. I'll get to that in a minute. But I'm going to back up. One of the things I want to talk about, one of the things that got me here, like some of the things I lost was they say this disease, you know, take away our dreams and all. You know, I was offered a scholastic scholarship at Tech. I was offered a track scholarship at Auburn. And I turned down all those things, and I really didn't realize why I self-sabotaged so much. And once I got here and heard blah, 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 and I'm an addict, it made so much sense. But went through a lot of stuff, and the thing that got me here was I'd taken and borrowed some money from my brother, and it was time to pay him back that Friday. And I had the money. I had like 5 times more than I owed him, I think. But I was going to go use, and he came home and says, I need my money. And this is when I couldn't cry, but I end up looking at him like, you know, no, I need to get by you, like, you know. And we ended up in a fist fight. Long story short, we ended up in a fist fight, and I remember shoving my brother back because I ended up shoving my brother back, and I remember pulled up a shirt, and I pulled up a pants leg, and I pulled up another shirt on my other side of my shirt. I said, listen, man, I got 3 guns on you. I wouldn't touch you with either one of them, but if you want to do me a gigantic favor, take those knives. He was a knife person. I like take one of those knives and slit my throat, and I put my hand behind my back for him to do that. And he didn't do it. And my mom and I was just void of emotion. My mom and my little sister, you know, I never ever forgot the look in their face and the crying. And my brother's not a crier, and I remember him crying. And I was like, "Oh, this dance done?" And I just walked by him, got some money, and went and copped again. And it was so crazy because we copped and rode through there, and I'm like, guys, what is going on? I'm like, look at all those people behind us. About 25 set of fatigue boots just busting everybody. And we walked right up and kept going. But I never got that image out of my mind. And a little later on, you know, and I forget a lot of stuff, but a little later on, you know, my mom used to call people to try to help, you know, get me help. I hung up on every one of them and cussed them out, you know what I mean? And I finally remember I called this guy and didn't really know who he was, and I'm like, look, man, I have screwed up life about as bad as you can screw it up. I've watched a beautiful black-headed woman turn gray, and I need some help, and I don't know what to do. I know I need to do something different, though. And I called this guy, and he was like, well, come up to the hospital. And I came up there, and it was Claude. It happened to be Claude T. And he says, well, yeah, man, we can probably help you out. And I went back home, and I, you know, got some clothes and stuff. But I remember knocking off a whole big ball of stuff. And he told me, like, they did a test. I'm like, man, you're probably definitely an addict. You're like 3.5 times the legal limit, but you're sitting here like nothing's going on, you know? And I went in there, and that's when Shannon was there, and Charlie was there, you know. There were 4 people there, and I think all 4 of us are still clean from 1986. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like there's that crew where, you know, you look at people like, only 1 out of 10. And we're like, well, good luck for you, buddy. I'm sorry y'all ain't gonna make it, you know. But all 4 of us are, you know, and I end up at another spot a little later, though. There's 50 of us. I don't really know the numbers on that, but that's a tremendous number. But Shannon, I remember Shannon talking, and I named people, because when I got here, my sponsor put me on a 60-day shut the hell up thing once. I couldn't speak for 60 days because of the craziness that were coming out of my mouth, you know what I mean? I'm like, you're going to kill everybody with that crap, you know? But Shannon kept bugging me about, he wanted a hug at first, and then he's like, man, you got to come to this meeting now. You got to come to this thing. And I've been up like 4 days. I remember looking at him like, listen, dude, I don't know you from Adam's house cat, but I'm going to tell you this right here. I'll go to whatever this thing is you're talking about tonight, but I promise you the rest of the while I'm in this spot, you're going to leave me alone, And he remembered, and he was like, that's a deal. I went through it, man. I was blown away. I sat next to him, and 5 people shared, and it was like, I'm blah, 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 and I'm an addict, and they started talking about their feelings and but they were laughing. I hadn't laughed in a few years, you know what I mean? And I'm like, hey, man, you mean these people know what I'm going through? And he was like, some of them worse, some of them not as bad, but they relate to you, man. I was just like, wow. Like, I was blown away, man, because, my mom asked me one time, she's like, sister, what are those people doing that can help you get clean that we couldn't do? And I'm like, I don't know, Mom, we get these people, we call them sponsors, and we sit in these meetings and we write on these steps, and, we share in the meetings, and then other people share, like, some solutions. I'm like, you know what, Mom, you know what it is? It's when I share something with y'all, and y'all look at me like I want to put me in an insane asylum. She's like, yeah. I'm like, those people are laughing at me when I'm halfway done talking. Like, they know, they get this craziness, and I've never met anybody on the planet, and we're talking about the therapeutic value, one addict helping another. I was tickled silly because I thought if there's a name for it, there's probably some help for it. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, it was just awesome to be able to have some hope. You know what I mean? And the first meeting I ever went to, I wasn't able to stay at that place, so I stayed for like 4 days, and they all knew I didn't have substance abuse insurance, so they booted me out. And I remember them asking me, saying, "Hey, do you want us to put you somewhere else, and you can just stay there?" And I'm like, "No, I'm good. I think I got this." Like, I seriously thought I did. You know what I mean? I seriously did, and I was in so much denial about the drug, alcohol being a drug. I remember coming back in, they laughed at me about 12 years about this. Many of us view alcohol separately. We cannot afford to be confused. I read that on a meeting one night, and I leaned over to him and said, when did they put that in there? Like, that's been in there all along. I didn't see it, man, you know what I mean? And one of the things, too, man, as far as, if you're new here, just welcome. One of the things, I have absolutely positively no room for judgment of anybody, but for the grace, there goes I if somebody struggle with this thing. I came in over and over and over again. I picked up 12 white key tags, and the last 5 was not easy. But I remember hearing this guy in a place one time. He's like, I picked up 53 white key tags, and every time I didn't want to pick up another, I'm like, man, you punk, that dude picked up 53 white key tags, And I just kept coming and kept doing what y'all said. And for me, a lot of, at the end, right at the end though, man, what I did was I just, I took and stopped listening to anything. I didn't listen to anything my head said anymore, because I'm like, no matter how large or how small, like everything this doggone head of mine come up with is giving me another white key tag over and over and over again. And I said, for the next 6 months, I'm going to get these 6 people, and I'm not going by anything this head of mine tell me. I'm going to just go by. And it was funny, too, because sometimes, like, I called a buddy of mine on a Thursday one time, and I said, man, I'm thinking about doing this. And he was like, dude, what's wrong with you? He's like, we just went through this Monday. And I thought, I really forgot about it, But for me, so much freedom came. I remember sitting there. I remember sitting one time, and I had this goofy look on my face. And my grandson was like, what's this goofy look you got? And I was like, man, of all the things I really got to deal with, drugs ain't even 5% of them, is it? He was like, nope. He says, you're going to be all right. Like, you know what I mean? He just looked at me and said I was going to be all right. But for me, it's, I was always too smart for my own good, and we have a lot, we run into, since I've been here, I've met, like, I was talking to Renee one time about people that come in and people that go back out, and he says, I don't know anybody me and my friend don't know anybody that's relapsed and gotten any better. I talked to a girl the night before that, and she was like, well, I got a raise, $26,000, and she was talking about different stuff, and I was like, well, she seems to be doing, and she called me 2 minutes after I stopped talking to Renee, and she's like, look, I need to talk to you. People can't see your insides. I'm hurting. You got all the people you need, and I looked, I'm like, scratch that, because she was messed up, and she needed some help, and at least 169 people since I started counting that came in and did it their way again versus Narcotics Anonymous way have gone back out and passed away. You know what I mean? We buried at least 169 of them. So, you know, this way worked. This way is 100% effective. You know what I mean? So I don't want to steer away from the day. And that's why I say I don't forget day zero. I forgot I used to couldn't tell you, I got 10 days clean. I couldn't even tell you, let me check my thing. I got 8 or 9, you know what I mean? Somebody was like, man, if this ain't the most important day in your life, you know, you'll get a new one. You know, and I kept getting new ones, you know what I'm saying? Gotta be extremely important, you know what I'm saying? It's like when I had them 4 days clean, I thought, oh yeah, I'm good. This is this thing. And, you know, I picked up a year key tag and said, you know, I'm getting this fellowship figured out. I picked up a 15-year key tag and said, you know, I said I had it figured out at a year, and I'm going to tell y'all today I might be beginning to scratch the surface of this thing. You know what I'm saying? So for me, just to stay here and not make this a thinking program like I've done with everything else in my whole life, you know what I mean? It's simply a suggestion program, you know. One of the things you'll never see me do, I don't use the word never. We used to have 40 people in an H&I meeting. Now you might have 7, 8 in an H&I meeting. You know, one of the things we do, and we'll take a newcomer come in, and what was done with me was, hey, come here. I want you to introduce yourself and get some phone numbers from some of these people. You know, what we see now is I see people get up and like, oh, look, just sit right there. We'll serve you up your recovery. We'll serve you up. Here you go. This is how it's done. We just do it for you. Get a piece of paper, sign the list. I'm like, a lot of y'all know that would have got ripped up like back in the day, you know. And and I had a newcomer tell me it's more of a disservice than a service. Like I never called any of them. Sometimes people call them, but we deprive them of an opportunity to work on it. If you want what we have to offer, and you're willing to make the effort to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. You know what I'm saying? And we shouldn't take that away from them. Allow them to walk up. We'll drive 1,000 miles to get some dope. You know what I mean? Why the hell can't we walk 5 feet to get a piece of paper and get a pen? And then they got the phones on them anyway, so they don't need the paper, you know? So it's just, and I'm passionate about it. I love newcomers. And I'm tired of seeing them doing disservice to them left and right. We went from like 40 to 50 people doing service in the HI mean to 5 to 7 people. And we wonder why they won't serve. What's our first message? Just sit right there, baby. We got this. Shit, my dad bought me up a lawnmower at 12 years old and never bought me another pair of shoes since I was 12. He's like, you know, if you want something, you're going to go earn it. You're going to go get it. You know, and I tried a lot of there to get dope. And so what is it for somebody to walk up and introduce themselves and have a name with a number? You know what I'm saying? I just buried a sponsor 2 weeks ago, man. Thank God he died clean, though. So there, y'all don't know how you fucking bet was, but there you go. Anyway, and you know, and one of the things I was just talking about in that first step is just the honesty. When I picked up that phone and I called Claude, I said I needed some help. Claude was there to help me, man. You know, Shannon was there to help me. Charlie was. I don't know the other guy's name. But anyway, anybody in the meetings, you know, and I'm kind of jumping around, but I want to share about this because it's so important right now. Everybody was there to just help and give. You know, a bunch of us went down to Fort Lauderdale in 87, and one of the things that we heard Brent talk about in 87 was, you know, at the time, NA was struggling. Like, you know, we were like, we struggling, this and that. And Brent says, you know, addicts aren't willing to make a commitment to their fellowship, but the other people were. You know, and our addicts would fall back over there. There was about 12 to 15 of us. We all made a commitment to Narcotics Anonymous. We had 88 people in the meeting one night. Instead of 12 to 15, we had 100 people. The fire marshal came and put us out of that meeting. And it was because we were willing to make a commitment. You know, I remember when I finally got serious and finally got clean with this thing, I'm like, you know what, man, I want to do, like at first, I'm like, I don't want any of that sponsor stuff. I'm not interested in this other stuff. So whatever, y'all, I didn't know what it was like serving. The last time I came in, I prayed for about 100 straight days to just wanted to die. I was supposed to meet Shannon at a meeting one night, and this is bad, man. I was supposed to meet him at a meeting. And these kids, it was like 7 of them, 7 to 14, or 14 to 17 years old. And I know they'd kill you, you know. So this guy told me, you know, instead of me meet Shannon said, man, you may not say clean, but we're going to mess up your using. He didn't say mess up. We're going to mess up your using. Yeah. I got robbed. I got guns pointed by all 7 of these kids because I'm supposed to meet them at a meeting, but I'm out here using, right? And I thought, I really didn't want to, like, death really felt like it would be a good thing, like the way I was living at the time. And I thought, man, I can get this kid, and this kid probably. And I'm sitting there thinking, I got kind of pissed. I'm like, hey, doggone, man. I'm sitting here looking at all these guns, and I'm hearing those people in the meetings' voices like, see what happens when you go out and use and you get murdered? I'm like, I came in there the next night and cussed them all out. I'm like, man, you blah, blah, y'all right, man, but I couldn't let them use me as an example, you know what I'm saying? Not that way, but I was just like, wow, I might as well stop using because I'll never be able to enjoy having a belly full of dope and a head full of knowledge, you know what I'm saying? And one of the things I did at early recovery was I just surrendered, you know what I'm saying? I completely and thoroughly, I remember saying, you know what? If you guys are wrong, then I'm failed. But whatever I've been doing, I'm destined to fail at that anyway. I've already failed. So if y'all are wrong, I don't have no reservations or any kind of none of that stuff. I'm doing this way. And if it worked, I'm good. If it don't, maybe hopefully it'll be better than the other thing. I surrendered to it. About 43 days clean, I've been happier than I've ever been in my life because I thought about the times I thought I was happy. I'd be driving, way over here on this side of the road and the divider over here, the car. I'm nervous as hell, you know what I mean? Because I'm always had something in the car. But for me, it was so rewarding when we talk about physical, mental, and spiritual nature of this disease. And we talk about the reward of just surrendering. And I said, Greg and Ed told me, I ain't really know what it meant. They said, listen, man, if you bet your life on Narcotics Anonymous, there's absolutely positively nothing that you can't go through and get through it clean. Nothing, And I remember, thank you, sir, and I remember telling them, I don't really know what the hell y'all talking about, but if it's good enough for you guys, I'll give it a shot. And it's been the case ever since. That was in 87, you know what I'm saying? So for me, it's just like doing it this way has always been better. And I became happier than I'd ever been in my entire life. You know what I'm saying? Ever. Like even as a child, I'm talking about Terry again. Somebody said the other day, Terry Schuler was like, as a kid, I'm thinking about him as a kid. Somebody said as a kid, he was always knowing what he's seeing stuff. And then all his adult life, most he was in prison. And he got a chance to get 11 years 13 years really with us. And it was by far the happiest years of his life, And a lot of us, we meet people at certain times, but really, for me, it's been, and I thought about it, it really was. And it's some of the happiest times for me too, because I was always getting to myself and sabotaging myself some shape, form, and fashion. And I thought my favorite things to do was like, effing or fighting, I'm like, oh yeah, that's fun, I'm having a gun. That's not really fun, you get kicked out of places, I couldn't go nowhere hard. My very best friend moved away in the middle of the night one time. I saw him 13 years ago. My brother-in-law took me to his house. And he said, Cece, you remember when you came back over there again? I turned my headlights off and I snuck behind this other guy. And I went over there and he says, and I wanted to die and I wanted kind of didn't mind if some other people died too, And so I snuck over there and he said, remember that night you snuck over there? I'm like, yeah. He's like, man, we moved again that night. Like they had a place on hold. And this is my best friend, you know what I mean? So, thinking about happiness and not ever invited, and we laugh. We tell people that keep coming back. I'm like, oh, really? Like, you know what I mean? You're invited back here like more than once, So, yeah, it was a real good thing. Y'all just said it like in general, but I wasn't, my dad would even say, I don't, because I moved out the house at 17. I moved back in at 21. And he'd say this phrase, I don't know if this house is big enough for both of us. I'd leave for about 4 days. I know what that meant. You know what I mean? He's on out of there for about 3-4 days, let him have his house, Come back and pay the rent money on Friday or something like, test him out, take a little look, So for me, for me, it's been some of the best. And people ask me, how you doing today? And I'm like, I'm blessed and I recognize it. You know what I mean? I remember going through stuff with, when my mom was really sick, and I was down at the nursing home, and I was watching people. It's a lot of old people. They were kind of pooping on themselves. They were, everything. They were bad. Some of them couldn't walk, but they were singing and they were praising. And I got to a meeting, and somebody walked up in a 2011 car, and it was 2011 the year, and they came up and just started complaining, man. And I just wasn't making a whole lot of meetings anyway. I didn't have the stomach for it, man. I just went off. I'm like, so you gonna tell me you're gonna walk up here healthy, both feet, both hands, have a brand new car, and bitch and moan about something, anything, And they were just like, we come and we talk about stuff, but and that was a friend of mine, so, we talked about it. He hugged. He was like, man, yeah, I'm sorry. I know your mom's been in a coma and this and this and that. But it's like, oftentimes with us, like the only thing's wrong with us is our head, But Narcotics Anonymous got solutions for all that. I used to take these tests, 566 questions. They never, ever, ever, ever gave me any answers to anything. They just looked at me weird, Somebody know what I'm talking about. And when I got to Narcotics Anonymous, I got so many answers. I got like 1,000 times the amount of answers I need. Part of it is acceptance and surrender. You know what I mean? It's just like I ain't got to figure out everything anymore. And how much more relaxing and rewarding is that than having to figure out everything or having to question everything and all that type stuff. But for me, it's like, gratitude is the order of the day. You know what I'm saying? And I always say also, I remember telling somebody, I had a lot of stuff going on. I'm like, man, it can't get any worse. I'll never, ever, ever, never say that again. I got a phone call. I had 3 things happen within. One thing happened within 2 minutes. I got a phone call. My brother had a massive heart attack and died after getting out of the hospital for like 3, been 7 days, and 3 days later, massive heart attack and died. Account got frozen. The company I was working with shut down. I'm like, wow, I'll never say it can't get any worse, And, some of the things that I've gone through here, was, I was talking, I had all this little stuff written down, I was planning on saying stuff, but I was talking with somebody about I had changed, like I've changed 180 degrees, I've changed this much. And he's like, yeah, a friend of mine in South Florida said, and we don't change that much. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, dude. Like, I'm just like, And right after that, somebody had told me somebody told my dad that if you ever on our property, you won't make it off alive. Never really said that from the podium, and they said, and he ended up on that property, but ended up not making it off alive. And yeah, and a week later, less than a week later, somebody broke in and tried to rape my mom and my little sister. And I hadn't changed 180. Trust me on that. I've never shared this podium. Most people don't know it. I took the truck down to Macon, dropped the freeze off in Macon, and I really tried to find a dude. This happened when I was 10 years clean. I told my, we have sponsorship things for sponsees and help them out and this and that. My sponsees kept wanting to have a sponsorship thing. We had it. I was rewarded so much more than any of them. My sponsor was there, and I'm like, look, man, I need to tell you something. I walked and talked to him like, for 10 years I hadn't mentioned this to anybody. I said, I really was looking for that dude, and it was weird. I had a few roommates. One of them, when I came back home after a few days, he's a little dude. He's like an old soul. He gave me a hug. He's like, next time you want me to go with you, I'll go with you. And nobody else really knew I was gone. But in my mind, I was just like, I'm about to find this dude. You know what I mean? God makes guns for a reason. I like all kinds of stuff, and I wasn't willing to talk about it. So, we need to be willing to talk about stuff. But one of the things that it made me know is this is a just for today program. And the longer you stay around, I'm giving a reprieve just for today. You know what I mean? And I'm only as good as my last second of action. I didn't really care at the time. I didn't care. I'm like, who tries to break in and rape a mentally challenged girl and her mom, her dad just died. You know what I'm saying? So for me it was, I don't know, I just was where I was with it. But I remember my sponsor saying, Cecil, well, they say vengeance isn't ours and this and this and that. And it's like, wow, man. I was kind of shocked that for 10 years I didn't share, and part of it I forgot about it, but part of it I didn't want to share it because it's like, somebody having a reservation about wanting to use, like, I share it, but somebody and not sharing about it. This disease can isolate us long enough. It's got us. I don't care who we are or anything. And it don't always get us using. For me, it always want to get me through that side door of anger or acting out in some behavior that I don't need to be acting out in. And I remember thinking, well, it's been a good 10-year run. I'll do the rest of the time in prison, that's fine, you know what I mean? So, but for me, it's like the disease normally wants us dead, but it'll settle for misery, you know what I mean? Getting us miserable. And and my mom, like, I was, like 2011, a lot of times we're always like kind of wishing for, New Year, come on, New Year's, like that. And it's a Just for the Day program, guys, so enjoy the day, you know what I mean? It's 2011 hit, Mom had an aneurysm. everything, kind of everything kind of. Matter of fact, there were 8 funerals. I think I made 5 or 6 of them. 8 funerals in a 3-week period. There were 3 of them. Then the next week, there was 2. My mom and my aunt, we buried them at 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock. And then there were 3 the next week. So it was just like a hailstorm of just stuff, you know what I'm saying? But you know what? Through all of it, one of the things I've done is I bet my life on Narcotics Anonymous. And I hadn't wanted to use, get this guys, I never knew anybody experience it. I hadn't wanted to use since I had 23 days clean. You know what I mean? So for me, that surrender, there's a lot of hope. Like, you know what I mean? It's like there's so much hope in that, in what Narcotics Anonymous gives us. Stop using, losers, I found a new way to live. I hadn't wanted that. It had to try to get me with the anger stuff, though. You know what I'm saying? So, but anyway, she had an aneurysm, and one of the things about she ended up being in 3 different comas and stuff like that, and I had to go down and stay with her for a week on the end, and I remember, some of the stuff, some of the nurses and stuff were wonderful. Some of the nurses and doctors wasn't so wonderful, but I had a talk with one of them, and a week later, my sister was like, "What in the world did you say to that doctor?" But like, she couldn't speak, had a trach and all, but I'm like, man, she couldn't speak, but this can't happen over my, you know what I mean? So, and people like Casey Scott taught me that, you know what I mean? Speak up for people, That's funny, Casey Scott. Casey, in 88, I think I was down here at a convention. And Casey was, I got pissed off at Casey Scott, right? So, I wanted this guy to be able to get in the dance, to come in the dance, and I didn't want him to pay for the dance. So I got mad with Casey, and we didn't talk for an entire year, So the next year I'm like, hey, I need to talk to you. And she's like, oh, you want to talk? I'm like, don't be smart, but I just need to talk to you. And I went down my little list of why she should have let him in, this and that. And she's like, all right, sister, let's check this out. He had the most expensive jewelry. Bill said he had the most expensive embroidered jacket that, the hospital. He had 2 cartons of cigarettes, 2 packs of sodas, and man, she went. I just stood there. I hugged Casey. We hugged for about 10 minutes. I've never had another argument with Casey. Never again, you know what I mean? She talked about the 7th tradition in our lives, and one of the things that happened with Casey, one of the last times I talked to her, and I talk about it, she's done a lot for this area. There's a lot of strong personality. Sometimes people may or may not get along, but she did a lot to help a lot of people. Matter of fact, we were supposed to do a couple of trips to different places that there's kind of racial tension. I remember getting clean, and I remember telling my dad, like, I said, Dad, Dr. King talk about, like, we're more divided on a Sunday morning than we are any other time of the week, I said, in Narcotics Anonymous, this is where people come together. This is where unity happens. This is where, so I was so happy and proud of that. But what I want to invite everybody in this room, or if you got sponsors or whatever, a lot of the calls that I've been getting and a lot of the stuff that I've been seeing, if we can't speak about what's going on here now, we ain't really talking about crap hardly anyway. All the stuff I've been seeing on like Facebook, all that different kinds of stuff, like think about day 0, man. Think about day 0, and if I was in day 0 and I needed this person, that person to help me, would I be putting some of this divisive, negative, nasty stuff that I'm putting on Facebook? You know what I'm saying? And I miss that era of our recovery. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can't take it back. You can't change. It's a new era. But I just want to invite everybody in here to try to help pass that message, man, because it's it rips my fucking heart out. It rips my heart out, And oftentimes, whether it's a meeting or a Facebook, whatever, the person that suffers is the newcomer, is the newer person, Because if we're promoting disunity amongst ourselves to be right about something, and that's one of the things that I can't talk to everybody about. I sure talk to my little knuckleheads months about, look, man, let's not put this kind of stuff. And they'll talk to me if I get a little out of line with something. They don't let me get this far out of line, So for me, it's been about unity. And I want to keep it about unity. This program is about spiritual principles, and it's like Brad used to tell us, he's like, man, I got the most self-righteous, indignant friends on the planet, but they're mine and I love them, right? So, and Brad was one of them people, it's, and one of the things I do too, at Frickner at 87 also, one of the things I'm going to share this. So a lot of time we get at conventions, and conventions are they spiritually sound overwhelming sometimes. I want to invite everybody that's new here to go to a meeting when you go back home from this convention. And even if you're here, like one of the things I did at 87, I remember I was pissed off. Man, 6,000 people, ain't nobody hugging me. And my great-grand sponsor's like, all right, I need you to go hug 25 people. I'm like, rah, rah, rah. And the thing I can tell you about sponsorship, I got a sponsor, going through stuff, doing all that stuff. They was like, the first 8 guys I asked wouldn't sponsor me. But they end up at the end of the day, all kind of end up sponsoring me. But I was a knucklehead, and they wanted nothing to do with it. And I got them all together and told them, y'all got to get this guy to sponsor me because he need a sponsee. And I didn't want to have to go 50, 60, 80 miles, And that guy, I remember asking Sylvester, laid back, quiet guy. Sylvester says, I started asking Sylvester, like, yeah, man, I know what you're about to ask. Hey, I need to tell you, I know what you're about to ask me. Like, just remember that you asked me, I did not ask you, and walked away from it. Walked away. And Sylvester, I called Sylvester that first year and a half. Sylvester never, ever, ever called me back. But you know what? I'll call him again. I remember calling him one night. And one day I'm like, hey man, I gotta talk to you. He's like, look man, I'm running late. He's like, are you heading to the meeting? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah. He's like, I'm running late. I'll meet you at the meeting. And look, bring us 6 of them white key tags back. And he hung up. Like, I had to bring, they were running low on key tags. So I had to bring 6 of them back. But he never called me back. But I was willing to put the energy and everything that it took. But I forgot what I was talking about before that. But yeah, it's crazy. But just the willingness and the energy and effort. I had to look back on it, and for me, man, it's like one of the things. If everybody in here was given $1 million, and I was given that amount of $1 million, one of my bets would have been I will never see 25 years old, and I would have bet all y'all's money. March 16th, I turned 56. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and it's through you guys. It definitely ain't nothing I was doing. One of the things I try to be mindful of is just staying humble. Try to stay humble. It's like I was so sarcastic and such an asshole, for a good long time. I ain't no other way to word it. But for me, this way, one of the things I heard early on was like, we either become humble or we become humiliated. I stayed humiliated. You know what I'm saying? For me, like humility also, I'm looking at myself, thinking about myself. I was in an H&I meet one time. It's called, yeah, I've been doing H&I. And it's kind of boasting me up. And I kind of felt like, no. Humility is accepting us for who we are, good, bad, and indifferent. I'm not perfect, I'm looking around. I got a couple people I need to pay them their money, but I borrowed some money from a couple, So it's like not perfect or anything, but the good, the bad, and whatever we are, just owning all of it. And for me, giving the higher power credit for like everything, it's like I don't have to own, I don't have to get too boastful or too low about anything, I remember, doing my 4-step, and I was not going to put my dad, like, man, by God, he ain't going on this list. Like, he ain't going. I'm talking about the 8-step list. I'm on step 4. You know what I mean? It was like, he wasn't going on. And I did that step 4. I left a couple of things off of it. And my sponsor was like, well, Cecil, you know what? We need to revisit step 3. He's like, you don't really have a 4-step problem. You got a 3rd-step problem. You know what I mean? My God wasn't big enough, and I went back and revisited, and I was able to share those 2 things that I was kind of ashamed of. So for me, it's like there's so much freedom that comes out of step 4 and step 5. A lot of times we talk, it's horrible, it's this and it's that. I'm like, it's just baggage that's gone. You know what I mean? How is that bad or hard, And I wasn't going to do my 4-step with I was going to do it with my 1-year-old nephew. I'll do it with my 1-year. He can't tell you about anything, about this preacher. Maybe I'll do it with this preacher. Man, I ended up doing it with Sylvester, man, and the stuff that he gave me back. I was still sick, man. I wasn't like, but I had to go back to 3rd step. You know what I mean? I wasn't like all in on this thing. You know what I mean? I could still do some time and stuff. I'm like, I don't know. I ain't get clean to be like doing no time and stuff. Like, you know what I mean? So anyway, it's like my best thinking. Lord have mercy. But for me, it's like, I wanted to make an amends to my aunt. Like, she came to the house. I wanted to make amends to her, and I was stuck in the back room. I was frozen with fear. I couldn't even walk out and do it. And my spouse was like, so you're on the 3rd step and you're trying to do the 9th step? Like that. And he had me to go back. You know what I mean? I'm like, I think I'll stick right where I am. one of the things I don't talk about, I wasn't going to put my pops on there, but one of the things I ended up, after I did that 4-step, I went in there with accountability being about that big on my 4-step. I came out with accountability about that big, you know what I mean? Because I had, even on that list, I had 5 people I resented and 84 people that I needed to make amends to. So if we crossed paths, you came up short, you know what I mean? Like I gave out resentments instead of getting them, you know what I mean? So I started looking at what Pops had done, but I had to just look at my part, and when I really looked at it, I'm like, man, you can't be denying that you're not a victimizer for anybody that ever cared about you or people that you haven't even met, some of them I didn't even know. And for me, it was just like I had to look at this part. And, they say resentment's like, I've heard this, like resentment's kind of like peeing on your leg, like you're the only one that feel it. Everybody else see it, but you're the only one that feels it, And it's kind of true, you know what I'm saying? It's really kind of true. It's just like, so for me, I don't like that in my spirit or anything. I don't want to walk around resentful. I've been given this new life, and I'm like, what am I going to do with this new lease on life? And one of the things I think about sometimes, I keep looking at people like Ed and Brent and Claude and different people, I'm like, am I standing on my predecessor? I'm definitely standing on my predecessor's shoulder. Am I passing lemonade down, or am I peeing on their head? You know what I mean? And some of the stuff we do, we're really peeing on their heads. We really are, you know what I'm saying? So for me, I try to take that into account at all times. It's like, like if the steps don't take me there, why would I want to go there? Kind of stuff, Because a lot of times we get a little bit of time, we know we say clean through anything, that self-righteous indignation kicks right back in, you know what I'm saying? So for me, it's just trying to stay humble. One of the things I did with Ed and Brent one time, like, look, I know I'll get a little crazy sometimes. Y'all just critique me. If you want to come up to me anytime and just tell me anything, I'm all ears, you know what I mean? And I was all ears if they ever said anything, So for me, it's just like, just for today, I'll get myself in a world of shit left to my own devices if I'm not careful, you know what I'm saying? So, because his head still, me and Kathy Laura Tales and some people were talking one time. We were talking to a newcomer. Newcomer was kind of scared to talk. We were like, why aren't you saying anything? Well, this stuff that's in my head. We were like, you want to hear some stuff in some heads? And we just shared. It's like some of the stuff there. And the newcomer's like, oh my goodness, I'm good. Ain't it? Like, you know what I mean? So, we'd had enough experience to be able to share, without fear of reprisal or anything, you know what I mean? But they were scared we're going to run away from them. We're like, no, we're just here to love you through this, you know what I'm saying? So whatever it is, But, and I talked about that, just the way every single time I got a hug when I came back in, it was a hug and I love you and welcome, and alcohol is a drug, because I was in denial about it and they smelt what I smelt like, so they just hugged me and welcomed me back in, and finally it caught on, you know what I mean? They didn't have to say it. They didn't have to say it for quite some time. And just talk about perseverance, the stuff that we go through, man. I'm looking at Bob. I know Bob have buried a couple of his kids here. My friend Kathy buried a 1-year-old. And if we're willing to walk through and if we're willing to bet our life on Narcotics Anonymous, we don't have to use that a thought. You know what I mean? We use that a feeling or thought. I remember Greg P telling me, like, all thoughts aren't things and all feelings aren't fact. And I'm like, well, so you're just saying I give too much validity to the facts and the thought. He was like, yeah, just keep coming, man. Your head's going to take you a million different ways. You don't have to follow it, though. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I was telling somebody earlier, I had a using dream at 21 years clean. Right before I picked up my 21 year, I'm like, it was a dream. You know what I mean? I had one when I was in treatment, got pissed off, woke up in a cold sweat. Dreams are just dreams. One of the things we do, though, if we come here and just take the suggestions, we never, ever, ever have to, waver again. You know what I'm saying? And I'm watching people that celebrating 40 years and 20 and 30 years, So for me, it's like, I don't waver from it. You know what I'm saying? They said going back to the basics. I'm like, how about just sticking to the basics? Just stick with the basics. You know what I'm saying? And that way we don't have to do anything different. But, and I'm going to share this experience. Sometimes I don't share stuff because it's kind of like, wow, that's kind of crazy. But, I was working on, I got a tip thing I was going to share, but I'm going to just share a little of it. So I was working on, my little nephew had just gotten bitten by a rattlesnake. And I broke up with the young lady I was dating at the time. And I'm like, man, I had 13 different credit cards. I hadn't used them, 8 of them. 3 different counts. Could not check in Millersville, get my own room. I said, I want my own room. I just, my nephew probably gonna die. Me and my girl, we were fighting. I'm just like, I just want to get away, So I couldn't do that. And I rode out to the middle of a field. And when you're doing step work, whatever step you're on, you go to conventions, you hit all those up. And I was buying all these books on prayer and meditation, and I was just doing all this stuff. I remember going out to the woods and just saying, please help me. Please help me. And as loud as I'm talking, I went from the most insane moment I'd ever experienced to the most serene moment. Because when you use, you're really not, you're just living insanity, and it's just a way of life. But being clean, I went from the most insane to the most serene moment I'd ever experienced. And it came at a time when I was kind of questioning higher power stuff, and I was doubting stuff, and for whatever reasons, And I thought, wow, there's no turning back, and there's nobody on this planet that can ever tell me there aren't burning bushes. No one can ever tell me that ever again. And it was weird, too, because my friend Kathy went through that. She was like, you told me that story 20-something years ago. I never experienced. I lost my son, and I had that similar experience. You know what I'm saying? But the people that I watch just bet their life on this thing, stay clean through anything, And the thing I love about Narcotics Anonymous is we believe that you can, too. You know what I mean? We don't say, maybe you're this or that and you probably can't stay. We just an addict, any addict, loses desire, stop using, find a new way to live. You know what I'm saying? And we believe in you guys. I was looking at that Just for Today reading, and one of the things I had to do early on, I didn't have to. I got a chance to blueprint my life on that Just for Today reading for about 90 days. And it was so rewarding. I didn't end up with people that were using. As a matter of fact, I won't tell you all the stories that happened. Well, I'll tell you this one. It was one of the last people that, it's G-rated. So one of the last people that offered me some drugs, like when I was going to treatment, he stuck some stuff in the car. I'm like, look, man, just give me 500 on Friday. Here's $1,000 worth. I've never seen the guy again. I just hit the gas. I ended up running over his foot. The stuff went everywhere. I was driving to treatment. But for me, it was like, that's where I was with that, like going in. I just need to get away from that. You know what I'm saying? I felt like I let him out pretty easy. But, and there was other things, too. I really did, like, you know what I mean? All things considered. Because it's just like he had a shotgun to my head, you know what I mean? Because I'd gone through so much stuff, and one of the things that lasted about 100 days or so when I was just praying to die, like, just please let me die, let one of these guys shoot me that I'm about to rob, or just let me, not wake up, or give me the courage to get up to 100 and drive my car off. My higher power would always put my sister and my mom right here. I was so pissed at God, you know what I mean? But he had a different plan for me, you know what I'm saying? And I said, I just remember saying, God, please, if you just let me make it one more time, I will help anybody. I'll do anything and everybody I can for people that's trying to help themselves. I happen to sell meat door to door to door, and people be talking about, yeah, the normal people. I just laugh every time I hear that. I'm like, boy, if you went to some of these houses with me and saw some of this stuff behind some of these doors, but I get to carry the Narcotics Anonymous message to people out there that don't have this, and they think, wow, that's amazing what he said. I'm like, look, some other people gave it. I was still amazed, and it is amazing, you know what I mean? It's a miracle that we do what we do, but, most everything that they get came from us, and, and I don't know how long I've been talking, but doesn't matter how long I've been talking. One of the things I want to say is, it's just about time for me to shut up and let you guys have some fun. One of the things with my mom, though, is like I remember calling, I remember going through a lot of stuff with her and just going through a lot of pain. One day you go in and hug and kiss her. Next day you're like covered from head to toe. You can't kiss her or anything like that. And I remember thinking, man, it's like the daily pain that people go through. People don't have any idea about what one day brings to the next. And somebody had told me, the very first guy I called, somebody was like, oh, Claude told me to tell you call. Because a lot of times, some of us won't call each other with them, I don't want to help you through that. Or they just can't do it or won't do it or whatever. But somebody said, call Claude. And Claude had gone through that same exact thing with 2 parents. Because then I'm sitting there thinking, man, people don't really, and I know we all come here from pain, and a lot of times it's just like pain is just pain, but for some reason I needed somebody to relate to that. You know what I mean? And if I pick up the phone, somebody will relate. That's the hope that, no matter what I go through, there's somebody that's been through. I got some of my assignment for sponsees, man, is to here, go call these 5 people. You got problem with relationships? I've never been married. Here, go talk to these people over here, in these relationships. Because our opinion will kill people. Our experience will save us, though, I ain't got no experience with marriage stuff, do I, y'all? I just want to say thank you again for asking me to come up here and do this. And I had a little script. That's so funny. Never touched the page, never turned anything, but that's kind of how it works, because, why do you need a script for your life? You know what I'm saying? It's just my life, and one of the things I don't say, I know y'all got to go smoke and pee and stuff, so I just want to say, my mom and my little sister showed me a kind of love that Narcotics Anonymous reintroduced me to, so I want to say thank you guys for allowing me to love and be loved. Thank y'all, Narcotics Anonymous.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. 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 Thank you,